Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have some folks here this evening to speak on behalf of proposed changes as amending the Animal Control Ordinance. I believe you have a list of those individuals that wish to sign up, and we had agreed to give them 20 minutes to speak.
Commissioner, I'm going to have to apologize to the folks that are here to speak on behalf of this item. We are running late. I will limit it to 10 minutes, and I don't know, do we have a list, Yvette, of folks signed up for this particular item?
We don't.
We don't. So folks that wish to speak on behalf of this item, you're welcome to step forward. However, we will cut off discussion at 10 minutes. And it is specifically for amendments to the Animal Care Ordinance. Identify yourself, name, address, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Ralph Levine, and I'm here on behalf of People for Animal Welfare of New Mexico. We're a grassroots movement in New Mexico with over 2,200 members, many of them from Bernalillo County. What we say is supported by a very large part of Bernalillo County's citizens. Starting in 2007 and continuing throughout 2008, we worked with Animal Care and the county commissioners to develop an ordinance that would be more protective of the animals that reside in our county. The new ordinance was passed on December 8, 2008, realizing that a few of the elements in the new ordinance, such as shelter and shade for livestock on 1 acre or less of property, and going from fixed point chaining to a tethered trolley, would take residents a little time to come into compliance. The new ordinance had an effective date of June 8, 2009. It's now been 22 months since the ordinance has been passed. We have been repeatedly told that many aspects in the new ordinance have not been able to be enforced because of a lack of specificity. I have spoken with the Bernalillo County District Attorney and an Assistant District Attorney in her office. I've spoken to Albuquerque City attorneys and several judges, and each has advised that the more specific the language, the easier it is to enforce. The amendment that we are proposing is only a clarification of the words in the ordinance passed in 2008. The amendment should allow Animal Care and county legal to enforce the intent of the 2008 ordinance. The amendment affects two sections of the ordinance, Section 645, Restraint of Animals, and 658, Care and Maintenance. Starting in 2007 and continuing to the present, our members have been reporting horses on Alameda that have had no shade or shelter from the weather and sun. This continues to the present. These horses have gone through a winter and a summer, followed by another winter and summer, and now entering their third winter, still with no shelter. These same horses do not have the space for normal exercise. The intent of the ordinance has still not been accomplished. There are cows that can be seen from Atrisco that are kept in such a small space that they all cannot lie down at the same time. This also hasn't been resolved. There are two longhorns on Lucero and Foothill that are also in such a confined space that they can't move around freely. This also has not been resolved. Words can be written in an ordinance with the best of intentions by the commissioners and the public. But if the Animal Care Services Department and county legal is unable to enforce the intent because of a lack of specificity, it does no good for the animals that are allowed to continue to suffer and no good for the public that is deeply concerned about the welfare of these animals. The amendment that we seek clarifies ambiguous terminology such as adequate, normal, and necessary. What we propose is based on other existing ordinances in New Mexico and elsewhere, and recommendations from recognized organizations such as the New Mexico Horse Care Council. Jean Soleil will speak on companion animals right now, but before she does, I would like everyone that has come here to support improvements in the language to make the ordinance more protective for the welfare of animals to please stand up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Jean Soleil.
Thank you, Commissioners, for graciously extending us time, although we were shocked to have it cut in half. We're glad to have some time to talk. I'd just like to say that the intent of very important portions of the ordinance is not being enforced, and we're constantly being told the reason is a lack of specificity. I'm going to concentrate on talking about dogs and begin by talking about the trolley systems. I've gone into the field and examined trolley systems and I've spent months researching it. I'm a research scientist, and I'm capable of doing that. And I found out a lot about how to set up secure, strong, safe trolley systems. Only one of the systems out of 30 that I examined was properly set up. There were numerous dangerous things that were going on. Trolleys were being set up so that the dog had access to fences. And this was done in many ways. Sometimes the trolley ran along the fence or too close to the fence. That can result in a dog in hanging itself. And there are numerous results and examples of dogs hanging themselves because they could have access. Their tether gave them access to a fence that was too close to the trolley, especially if it's an aerial trolley. Few trolleys had the right hardware or equipment. Some of them were not strong enough, were weak, or were going to give out, and were not the correct functional part that was needed for that particular part of the trolley. So in summary, most of the trolleys that are being found and being set up with the guidance and supervision of animal care services and implicitly by our government are dangerous now, and because we didn't realize when we passed that ordinance in 2008 many of the consequences of the things that we were asking for, and we didn't realize some of the things that could go wrong. So this has been rectified in this proposal. The next thing I'd like to discuss is Section 658, Animal Care and Maintenance. All the terms being used to enable the offices to enforce the most important aspects of this section are much too vague. They are either the use of the term adequate food, adequate living area, adequate grooming, adequate this, adequate that. And we're constantly told that does not enable enforcement of the intent of any particular section of the ordinance. Our amendment is detailed and specific because it's the only way that the needs of different animals can be understood by the public, by ACS, and by the legal department. We base our recommendations on minimal acceptable standards obtained from other ordinances, many of them from New Mexico, from educational flyers produced by organizations such as the New Mexico Horse Council, and from educational institutes within and outside of New Mexico. Some of the serious problems involve shade and shelter. ACS offices and the public don't realize that the temperature inside a doghouse in the summer, where it looks nice and shady, is actually hotter than the temperature outside of the doghouse. So independent shade is needed. Shelter and housing, the Animal Care Services is presently accepting 4 poles and a roof as shelter against the extreme weather conditions that exist here in New Mexico. Some dog houses are totally inadequate. They're not weatherproof or waterproof, and they are being accepted by animal care. And again, I am told the lack of detail is a reason for this as well. Sometimes animal care offices accept the fact that a perfectly fine doghouse is owned by the owner, even if that doghouse is in the garage and the dog has absolutely no access to it. So free access to a doghouse is necessary as well. There are no regulations at present for minimum pen or enclosure size for outside animals, and what's there is not strict or specific enough. Currently, there are no restrictions on pen sizes for dogs, cats, or domestic animals being kept outside. This became an extra critical issue when we removed dogs from fixed point chaining Owners took their dogs off the fixed point chains and started putting them into very tiny enclosures, where often the animal can't even have room to walk around. Sometimes 2 or more animals are in a small enclosure, and the enclosure is only large enough to hold one house. So we need regulations and specifications for these animals that are kept out of doors, and by the way, most of them are kept out of doors for their entire life. Horses are kept in enclosures barely large for them to turn around or walk around in. There are no specific requirements for shelters or homes for livestock, and those are given in the present ordinance. There's no specific requirement concerning grooming. We have equines suffering from foot rot and foundering. Some can barely stand up straight. Their feet are in such terrible condition. Dogs' fur can become so matted and so densely clumped that it's painful for the animal to even lay down over those clumps or to sit on top of those clumps. And the places between clumps just leave the bare skin, which is then susceptible to having goat heads and other kinds of burrs embedded in it, and to insects which eat away at the naked fur. Potable water seems like an obvious thing, but sometimes this water is supplied in such tiny vessels. Typically, I was finding the water was being supplied in this kind of small plastic container that you would take food away from a Chinese restaurant in. And this would be for a big dog. So you'd see this little plastic container laying on its side and obviously no water. Even if it was standing upright, in the wintertime, there was such a small amount of water present that it would be frozen solid and unavailable to the dog. There were no requirements specifically about living area and sanitation. Some pens or enclosures are strewn with litter, car parts, old machinery, and about everything else you can think of. These items pose great danger for a dog and make exercise, play, or even just walking around almost impossible. The area may be so filled with feces that dogs are given food that is actually layered on top of the feces.
Thank you.